Yes, indeed, everyone. Glad to come on another momentous day in the NBA. This is the Runnin with WARR show with our special trade deadline spectacular. A lot of things going on today, man, in the NBA. We just saw some wildness up on the TNT broadcast, and everything is coming together at once with the news that's happening tonight. But we're gonna parse it all out as best as we can. But I think the way to look at this is that you got the league. You had AD and BC. Not Anthony Davis, but you know, as far as time goes, you got AD and BC. I think in the NBA now you got B BT and AT, B before trade and after trade, and you got maybe to be specific, is before Harden and Simmons, and after Harden and Simmons, and the trade that we was all expecting to happen, that we was hoping to happen, that to rock the league and reset the league. I think for the rest of the season has happened today. It makes the trade deadline. Usually there's a couple of different ways you can look at these type of events. With the trade deadline, you can look at quality versus quantity in regards to the trades that are made. But sometimes, you can look at quantity over quality, meaning just, you want to see a bunch of trades happen just because. But at certain points, you have to have that specific deal that is made that really again resets the timeline, resets the narrative. And this year that deal was Ben Simmons for James Harden. We had it at the beginning of the year, knowing that Ben Simmons was pretty much through with Philadelphia. He didn't want to play there anymore. Where the question arose of where was he going to go? Over time, you get that twin narrative developing in Brooklyn about, the big three there and how are they coexisting, and, just what effect does Kyrie Irving not playing half the games, what is it having on that team? We go on to see that it's affecting James Harden more so than anybody else, and he's fed up with things, how they're going there, and he wants to get out of Brooklyn. So, when the twin powers activate, Sean Marks and and that was my man in Philly. Moria, they get together, they get in the lab. Who knows how long they've been talking over things, but we were all just plaintively waiting to see if they could make that deal happen in time for the trade deadline today. 3:00 Eastern, 2:00 here in the Central Time Zone, and they didn't waste much time today. A couple deals went off the board, earlier in the day, but pretty much by noon, and then noon hour, I think that deal got announced, and we all sort of wrote that those remaining 3 hours of the deadline, just reacting to that, even as more deals were being made, but winds up being a hell of a day. And like I said, it even plays into this trade, this all-star draft day that they're doing, that currently wrapping up on TNT. We'll get into that later, but I got my man Josh Hicks here, as y'all can see, and hopefully we'll have a couple more of our fellas joining us in time. We should have Gabe coming on in the second hour after 7:00. We'll be on till about 7, probably about 7:45, because I got to hop off and do another show at 8. But Sean Terry giving me some confirmation, co-founder of WARR Media, that he'll be coming on. He's going to want to talk a lot about what the Bulls did and didn't do. I guess didn't do. They didn't really do anything today. So we're going to definitely talk about the Bulls, talk about the league overall, And yeah, like I say, just another monumental day, Josh. Man, I'll let you go into it, man. I've been rambling enough, man. What are your thoughts on the day, man? Initial thoughts, and how did everything play out for you?
Well, in our chat, that we have regarding the runners, we have a special. Even though this guy couldn't be on our show today, we got to give a shout out to our guy Drew. It's his birthday today. So
yeah, happy birthday, Drew. That's the only reason why I'm accepting him not coming on today, because it's his birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday to you, Drew, and I hope you got a hell of a present, because the NBA trade deadline was lit. It definitely,
yes, indeed.
There was a lot of fireworks for sure, a lot of drama, a lot of conversation. This is definitely going to be one of those ESPN 30 for 30s where review moments, especially in regards to this, like I said, this Harden Simmons trade, the behind the scenes of Simmons getting to, come with the fiasco in Philadelphia, getting to Brooklyn, and vice versa with James Harden. Not just with what happened with him in Brooklyn, but honestly, you can go back to the Houston days, that got him to Brooklyn. To be honest, over time, two teams in 2 years, and now he's about to transition to another team with the Sixers. I think if you want to talk about the overall grade or opinions as far as who won the trade between the Brooklyn Nets and the Philadelphia 76ers, James Harden, Ben Simmons, I kind of like both. I think both teams won. Especially, honestly, if you really think about it, Philadelphia might have been the team that James Harden should have been to in the first place compared to Brooklyn.
Yeah. This is sort of like a delayed the deal that brought him to Brooklyn was a 3-team deal. It was like a delayed 4-team deal, sort of. Because, yeah, like you say, he should have went to Philly in the first place coming out of Houston. But he winds up going to Brooklyn. It winds up being a detour where he winds up going to be a part of a big three. They wind up only playing 16 games as a big three over a year and a half, which is amazing. And that's going to be cited a lot. But, that happens. All this happens. Like I gave my preamble, and he winds up in the place where he pretty much anyway, following Daryl Morey up there. And I'll go ahead and continue, but I just dropped that off. Like, it's funny how that happened. Like,
oh yeah, most definitely. I think what makes this so interesting, the timing of all of this, is the fact that people, criticized Daryl Morey for the longest, talking about, he's waiting to get the right moment, to get the right guy, wants a superstar. A lot of people were bashing him for his process in handling this, and yet look what he got. He ended up getting the superstar in James Harden, and a superstar familiarity on top of that. Putting him with Joel Embiid is going to be one of the most deadliest, if not the best duo in the league right now. Especially when you talk about that pick and roll action, where James Harden could be so decisive when it comes to creating his own shot off the dribble, drawing fouls, or being able to kick it off to Joel Embiid, who is a pick and pop and a pick and roll guy who could just do it all. Joel Embiid's having an MVP caliber season. As long as James Harden goes to Philadelphia, knowing that at the end of the day, even though the ball may be in his hands a lot, it is still Joel Embiid's team. Then Philly's going to have something to work with. But I am going to be interested to see how the dynamic is going to be between James Harden and head coach Doc Rivers. Because if you really think about it, ever since James Harden left Oklahoma City, he got to Houston and went from Houston now to Brooklyn. He's played with very chill, laid-back type of coaches that kind of let him do whatever he wants. Mike D'Antoni, Steve Nash, they're offensive minded and very loose with how they wanted the flow of things to go. You just play ball. You're going now to a set system with Doc Rivers, where the offense is centered around Joel Embiid, and Doc Rivers is at the same time a different type of even though he's a player's coach, it's a different type of player's coach. He's going to hold you more accountable. He's more stern on some things. He's about discipline as well. So because of those things, and James Harden not fully being accustomed to that, and people are already questioning his character as far as if is James Harden fully committed to doing whatever it takes to win big basketball games to get and win a championship. That's going to be an interesting dynamic. That's going to play a role that I'm for sure going to be paying attention to, and it could be the deciding factor as far, even though James Harden has opted into his contract for next year's option. We're talking about a year and a half of seeing if this duo and this system, if it can work for James Harden. Considering that James Harden hasn't tried free agency yet either, it's going to be interesting to see how that dynamic goes and all the way up until next season or the next off season, to see if he wants to stay with Philadelphia or if he actually wants to move again to a more situation if the things don't, work out in Philadelphia. And that's something I'm definitely going to be paying attention to. And on the Brooklyn Nets side, I think this is a huge.
Let's hold up. Let's hold that for a second. I'm ready to Sean in. Right. He's been holding on. And
what up, boys? Yo.
What's going on, Pharaoh, Sean?
I'm good, man. Scary hours in the East. A lot of change today.
Wow, man. It's wild. Yeah. And we got to say Sean is out there posted in Cleveland where they got some news over this past week as well. Some good news with the Karis LeVert trade and good news overall with the way those Cavs are playing. Because he's a Chicago guy, so he's mainly interested in what the Bulls are doing or not doing, like I said. And like I said, we're gonna get into that, but definitely before we go to the Brooklyn side of things, I do want to say it is interesting. I'm glad you brought up the contract situation with Harden, because I think amongst our circle we was talking a lot leading up to this and sort of all on the same page, thinking that Harden would likely be checking out free agency this year because again, like you say, he hasn't checked it out. He hasn't been a free agent in his career. He went right from the rookie deal with Oklahoma City to a big re-up with Houston when he forced that trade, and he's just had big re-ups the rest of his career. It is interesting that he picked up the option, I guess, for next year, and he's gonna let this play out. Maybe he's has some confidence in some way that that this is worth his while. I mean, this is the move they want to make. He maneuvered himself again to a place where he wanted to be, but a lot can change in a year and a half, like you say, Josh, and I guess that means more to him, that comfort and that, at least temporarily, and that potential for a chip right away, which is there in Philly, definitely. Over maybe his being pampered and appealed to on the free agent market, So we'll see what it comes down to. Again, people want to mention the Philly strip clubs. I don't know, who has too much familiarity with them. We might have to bring in an expert on that and see, how they'll be able to cater to Harden and all that. But before we get into the Brooklyn side of things, Sean, just give your overall take on, reaction to that deal, to that deal specifically. We don't go over all the big deals, but that deal specifically. Give your reaction to it, how it went down, and what do you think the fallout's going to be?
Yeah, I mean, big time shakeup. I wasn't expecting. I think in the long term, Brooklyn probably wins the deal. I think in the short term, Philadelphia, just because they get rid of Simmons, who all-star, star in the league, love him or hate him, but he wasn't on the floor for them. So they bring in a guy who is going to produce in a major way, give them a nice compliment to Embiid. At 32 years old, the window and sort of in a declining game, just more so because of the way that the league is being officiated now and taking away some of the things that Harden did to get to the free throw line. I think, now's the window's now for him in Philadelphia. Personally, I would have loved to see them maybe use some of the assets that they used to get Harden to go after Dame Lillard with, all the change that was happening in Portland. And knowing that Harden showed his hand and being interested in Philadelphia, maybe made that move in the offseason as a free agent. And then really, they would have had a nice big three going into next year. But it is what it is. It's going to be a learning curve for both teams. So, out of the gates, I don't think that either one is really going to, just take off. It's going to be some getting to know each other and some adjustments made on both sides. So we'll see how this thing plays out. It'll be a trip though if they end up facing each other in that first round.
Or any round really, but yeah, it could definitely happen. I was thinking about that myself. Josh, as I said, we take it over to the Brooklyn side of this thing, and Sean mentions how the things refers to how things sort of played out with this deal, where at one point the leverage may have been different for Philly against Brooklyn, but things changed when it became so apparent that Harden wanted out and that he wanted to go to Philly. Leverage changed at that point, and I think it worked out in a way for Philly where they were able to retain some talent that Brooklyn may have been more, earlier in the process, earlier in the negotiations. Brooklyn may have been more intent on having certain guys come in the deal back to them, and particularly Matisse Thybulle and Tyrese Maxey. Those were two guys that were talked about quite a bit. In the end, they are kept out of the deal, and they're still in Philly. Whereas, little brother Curry, Seth Curry, is involved in the deal, and Andre Drummond, who was providing some key minutes in the, reserve minutes in their front court in Philly, and could do much of the same in Brooklyn, but not necessarily a terrible loss. When you count either of those guys, and not a loss that really affects their future in Philly as much as losing Thybulle or Maxey would. So, I guess starting from that point, like I say, you look at what Brooklyn receives, while also giving up only Harden and Paul Millsap, who incidentally was a target for the Bulls. A lot of reports said. But what do you think about, like I say, the interaction there, the exchange, and like I say, you want to take it over to reaction, looking at Brooklyn?
No, I think it's big that Philly was able to maintain those two guys and still have, ideally, a firepower type of offense still to go along with Joel Embiid and James Harden. From Brooklyn's side of it, though, I think it's actually kind of a big deal that they actually were able to get those two picks. Just because the picks now, they were able to regain some of that those assets that they gave up and to get James Harden, and you can utilize that to flip it in some way, shape, or form this offseason. Especially, I think that was part of the plan when it came to the trade deadline, actually, because once this trade was complete, they was trying to trade potentially Andre Drummond or Nick Claxton, I want to say, with those two picks for Miles Turner. But they was able to flip that. You're talking about a three-headed monster with potentially Ben Simmons, Kevin Durant. If Kyrie was playing full, all the games, Kyrie Irving along with Miles Turner, that's a whole nother story. But in regards to what they were able to fulfill now, Ben Simmons is going to fit in perfectly with the Nets. I actually think he's going to be a better fit than people expect with the Nets than he is in Philly. Especially since offensively, Ben Simmons, even though we get on him about how he doesn't want to score the ball, he's scared to shoot free throws, and scared to get fouled and things of that sort. That's fine. But it actually gives him an opportunity to be more of a power forward type of guy. or a point forward per se, that gives all the free reign offensively, kind of opens up the floor for Kevin Durant to still be Kevin Durant. If Kyrie Irving was still being Kyrie Irving, is able to play more games, at least for the road games that he has, you still have a scoring option with Kyrie. And honestly, even though the big three originally of James Harden, Kevin Durant, and Kyrie Irving, even though they won majority of the games, they only played 16 games. I think they won 13 of them together. Even though they won those 13 games, you can tell there's still some sort of dysfunction in a way offensively when it comes to taking turns. You alleviate some of that now with Ben Simmons, who's more of a facilitator and someone that actually helps their fast break game and pushing the pace, pushing the tempo, and he knows how to help get guys like Kyrie and Kevin Durant into their sweet spots for them to flourish even more offensively. Then I also think Ben Simmons defensively brings that additional perimeter help and versatility that the team desperately needs. But also the sleeper of this trade too, aside from Ben Simmons, is Seth Curry, because Brooklyn needs shooting terribly, and they got some of that. And not to mention, now you got Joe Harris eventually coming back too when he's fully healthy. You got that coming back this season. Combining that with Seth Curry, you have additional shooting with more guard play of Cam Thomas coming off the bench, who people are really underrating on and sleeping on in this league. He can fill up some buckets as well. So I think because of the Seth Curry addition, it makes the trade that much more ideal for the Brooklyn Nets, because offensively they have more shooting. Ben Simmons if you get a good Ben Simmons mentally coming back and he's still in good shape and gives you at least 80% of what he's good at, which is facilitation, facilitating the offense and playing great defense, combined with the scoring opportunities of Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. I mean, you put yourself in a better position to go get that championship that you originally was coveting and trying to go after when you brought Harden in the first place. And I honestly, bringing Ben Simmons to replace that option now makes your offense better. And it puts the Nets in a better position to reclaim, hopefully, some of that momentum and get back into the swing of things of where they were when they did have that big three lineup.
Now I can't really argue any of that, Josh, but I think the one thing that sticks with me, and the one thing I think that needs to be figured out in the near future, at least, is how soon will Ben be ready to play, and what mind state will he be in once he gets on the court? How long will he be in a truly competitive place where he can? We do know, he can do all those things that you say on the court, but we also know that he has brain farts or brain locks at some very key times. That's really what led to all this happening. His play in that game, in that series, really in general against Atlanta, but especially in that game 7. If he's that guy still when he gets to Brooklyn, then his impact on that team is going to be limited. But if he has learned something, or if he has steeled himself some way, reserve, if he has gained some reserve in his spirit through this whole situation, and he may have done that. He may come away from this saying, "Look, I won. I stood my ground. I didn't come back into the fold in Philly. I told them that I felt the way I felt, and I wasn't going to come back, and you had to deal with that, Philly 76ers." And that's what happened. He didn't play another second for that team after that playoff series, and he winds up now playing alongside two of the best players in the league, arguably top 10 players in the league, and Kyrie and KD, and that has to mean something for him. But we got to still see him execute and get out on that court and bring it in a competitive fashion before we can be comfortable saying that he's going to do all those things that Josh said. But he's definitely capable of doing those things. And my question, I'll just throw it out to you, Sean, is how soon do you think he'll be able to do that, if at all, at any point in this. Will it be during this season? Will we have to wait for another season for him to get going again, or even longer?
I think there's plenty of season left for him to really ramp up, from a conditioning standpoint. But I think what you're referring to is like the mental edge.
Mental edge. I mean, spiritual edge.
Yeah, I'll take a page out of Josh's book in reference to the personality fit with the coach. And on the flip side, you pair Ben Simmons with a coach like Steve Nash, who they both international guys. Nash has at least from our optics, a pretty laid back personality that I think probably meshes better with Simmons. And then he's they talk about shooting doctors who can, work with a player and get in his head. I mean, Nash is one of the best shooters in the game, the history of the game. And he's, on record in having a big role in unlocking the full potential of Dirt and Whiskey and in the Mavericks years, and to a lesser degree, but still very much important during his time with the Suns and helping Amari Stoudemire reach his full potential. So I think that the makings are there for a good matrimony between Simmons and Nash as a head coach. And then, what you pair him with a guy like KD who has a similar laid back vibe and, is an assassin of a shooter as well. I think some of that just naturally takes the pressure off of Simmons to have to score in ways that Philly wanted to see him score. And Josh hit on all the points on the court with his game and being able to just play to his strengths. You put a player in a position with that much talent to just do what he does well and not have a lot of pressure offensively. I definitely think, he can come in and contribute right away. He's been battle tested, so he's got the edge of last year's playoff experience to kind of, on the flip side, it could be a detriment, but it also could be one of those things where he's been sitting out for 3 or 4 months, getting ready to destroy. So I always look, glass half full. I don't know, man. It's going to take him some time to get his sea legs, and he hadn't played like NBA basketball, but it's plenty, 40 plus games plus the playoffs. And he's got more than enough time to get ready for the playoffs and for a deep run with a Nets team, who now on paper, gosh, I mean, Kyrie, his situation, they get to play the middle of the pack thing and make a late push. We'll see if they can get in that top 4. But, like I said, it's scary hours. Nobody wants to see them in a 7-game series now with that 3.
Yeah, it's about maybe 30, 35 games left, I would think. Let me see. The Nets have played 64 games. So yeah, we're a bit further along in the season than you think, but still, some time. There's some time there.
Well, let me add this too. I think the Drummond acquisition probably is something that we can't underscore. Like, size was an issue for Brooklyn this year. On paper, you got Aldridge and Blake Griffin, but at best, those are, aging veterans, pick and pop guys, but they weren't getting down dirty in the paint like that. Drummond gives you a counter to an Embiid, somebody who you can rely on in a 7-game series. Milwaukee, they got much larger in their front court. Cleveland with their 7-footers. So low key, the Drummond acquisition, granted they didn't get Thibault and Maxey. I think low key the Drummond acquisition may work even more to their advantage in the short term this year, based on
Sure.
who you might encounter in the playoffs in the 7-game series of, with the front courts that I just mentioned.
And Curry, I really like Curry in that deal because he supplements you with the 3-point shooting that was lost with Joe Harris being out. So yeah, Brooklyn did well for itself in the deal. I would definitely say, and even like I say, I don't know. I said it on Twitter. I thought they were wild. If they were asking for Maxey on top of Simmons, I think they were kind of wild for doing it. But it might have been, a negotiating ploy that allowed them to get something else that they wanted or wanted just as much, and that could have been, like you say, Sean, that size and that that shooting, that that helps supplement things that they had, but they hadn't had as much of this year because of injuries and whatnot. But before we move on to the Bulls, anything else you want to jump on from the last bit that we took from you, Josh, as far as the deal?
No, I think Sean made a very good point, especially when it comes to the Andre Drummond situation. Because Brooklyn definitely was thin in the front court, and to be able to get a quality talented Andre Drummond to pair with LaMarcus Aldridge and Blake Griffin, Nick Claxton, and that core there, that's a pretty big thing that they're going to need down the stretch. Obviously, we got to make sure then hope that Ben Simmons is all right mentally, and he's able to come back ready to roll. But from reports that came out, it seems like he's already taken those big steps. He's excited for this chapter, and he's ready. He can't wait to get on the court, it appears, in due time. So I'll be interested to see how that goes, especially if he does play before March comes. I want to say Philadelphia, Brooklyn goes to Philadelphia. I think it's March 7th or something like that. So that could be the game.
That's been mentioned, that their upcoming game. With let me see, but go ahead.
But no, I think that's a game to circle now. But to circle on the list to see how Philly's going to react to Ben Simmons coming to that city again. So hopefully he's prepared for that. I wouldn't be surprised if he's sidelined for the most part and doesn't come back till after that, because that can be a lot and it can take a toll mentally on him if he's not prepared for it. But it's definitely something to look forward to, and I'm interested to see how the rest of the season goes between both of those teams, because that trade alone was the worst thing that could possibly. That's the worst news the Bulls could have gotten. With that trade taking place, especially since both those teams got better because of it. It was one of the worst things you could have asked for, not just for the Bulls, but for the Eastern Conference in general.
Yeah, definitely, and that game is March 10th, and
March 10th, right?
So it's some time there for him to Simmons, whether he gets on the court or not, to ramp himself up for that game. There's been some that I did remember some discussion earlier on social media about whether he would want to play that game or not. I think it would be a good sign if he does want to play that game, and he shows up and takes what the game will be in Philly. So if he shows up and is willing to take what the Philly crowd offers him, I think it'll be a good sign about where he's at mentally and what he's ready to do in the immediate future for the Nets, and not just for the extended future. But we're gonna get into the Bulls in a second. But I want to make a quick detour, because we are gonna talk about this more later. But the All-Star draft, like I said, just wrapped up on TNT. I don't know if you saw this, Sean, but it was a great. The draft really got great in the when they were drafting the bench players, because Harden is in the bench, and the captains, as if you don't know, if you in the audience don't know, was KD, and because he was leading vote getter in the East, and LeBron leading vote getter in the West. So they were making their picks and everything, and slowly but surely it was noticeable to everybody. Of course, it was noticeable to Chuck, because he's the petty. Chuck and Shaq, they know petty when they see it, and they were starting to laugh, because it was getting obvious that that KD was avoiding picking Harden, and and with every pick, it got the laughter came out more and more, and LeBron got into it. He started hiding his face and stuff, because LeBron wasn't picking him either. And it winds up at the end, Harden is the last pick, because the last two picks were Harden and Gobert, yes, thank you. And so it was Harden and Gobert on the screen, and it was KD's pick, and KD was like, well, I need some size. He's so deadpan. That was the best part of it because KD knows KD knows how to play this whole situation. He knows that everybody is in on what he's doing at this point, and he's not laughing. He's not giving away the joke at all. He's playing it completely deadpan, and he's like, well, I need me some size, so I will go with Durant. I'm going Gobert, and then everybody just bust up because Harden is the last player left on, and by default he goes to LeBron's team. But that's just great TV. It's gonna be people gonna be talking about that for the next 24 hours, definitely how that played out. But like I said, we'll go over the teams in a little bit, and the Bulls, by the way, the two All-Stars from the Bulls, one going on each side. DeRozan as a starter was picked by LeBron, and Levine was picked off the bench by Durant. So they're going to be on separate teams. So that'll be interesting. But so we'll go more into that with when Gabe comes on. But let's just go into the Bulls. Like I said, it's not really it's the complete opposite of last year. They weren't a playoff team last year, but they sort of went in during the deadline and made an effort to make themselves a playoff team. Didn't wind up playing out that way. This year, they are a playoff team. They made, great seismic moves over the offseason to get themselves in this position. And yet and still, there's still some obvious areas of the team in the front court in particular where people would have liked to have seen them do something. But, when you look at the way the roster is right now, who's available and what's available at what prices, it didn't really look like they were going to be able to do anything of any significance today. And that's how it played out. So there's a couple ways to look at it. You could be scared to death right now because half of the potential playoff teams, at least half in the East, they improved themselves today, definitely. Starting with those Nets and 76ers. Or you could say, look, the Bulls are falling back, and they're bound to fall back even more in light of what's happened today. Or you could just say, look, the Bulls will have reserves coming eventually. Caruso and Ball should be back before the end of the regular season, and there's a increasing possibility that Patrick Williams will be available by the postseason. So I'll leave it to you guys. What are your guys' reactions and on what the Bulls didn't do today? Do you think that they played it right? And do you expect anything to happen in regards to the buyout market and stuff? What are y'all thoughts overall?
You go ahead, Josh.
No, I think I'm not surprised with the roster that's currently constructed and the contract situations of each of the players that we have. It was going to be tough to flip and turn deals anyways, especially if you're not willing to give up Patrick Williams or maybe even a Kobe White. I think it would have been difficult to pull off any type of major trade. But I think it's a testament to Arturas Karnisovas and Mark Eversley's path and direction where they feel this team is going. It's how much faith they have in this roster that's currently constructed and that they believe that it's a playoff team that can go to that next. They have a really strong springboard to go to that next level. They're proud of the foundation that's being laid. So because of that, there's no need to shake the foundation when over time you can eventually build on it. And I think that's why they're willing to go out and check out the buyout market. Kyle, I've talked about if I was the Bulls, I would have done the same thing. Kept the roster as is, look into some things here and there for some wing depth or for sure big man depth, because they need some more depth in that front court. And one of the best ways you can get that for quality talent for a low price is the buyout market. We saw that, even though Kyle looked at me kind of crazy when I put this on Twitter, but Freedom is on the market. Enes Cantor or Enes Freedom is on the market. He got bought out. He's a big man that gets rebounds and can be a little bit of an offensive threat. Well,
look, just right quick. I I mentioned when the deals were still happening before the deadline, I mentioned being a little irked or perturbed, as it were, that a guy like Montrezl Harrell went off the board. You know, he winds up getting traded to Charlotte for really not much at all. Ish Smith and another guy, a young guy who wasn't getting any playing time. But you know, I mentioned that, and shout out to Sean Davis, who is giving us a retweet on Twitter. While we've been on, he came at he's never afraid to let his opinion be known. He came to me about like why am I upset at all about that, and he brought up the fact that Harrell isn't really the guy that because the Bulls' issue in regards to the front court in particular, that's to do with defense and rebounding. It's not an offensive issue. The Bulls are still scoring like 120 a game as is. So I was just like, look, Harrell gives you some edge. He gives you, some energy in that front court that I would rather have than not have, even if he's not the greatest defender, on pick and roll or whatever, on ball, whatever. I would rather have that, especially if you're not giving up much for him, than not have it. Now, if you're talking about a player who was comparable in that way, but even less of a player, I would say that Edith's freedom is the one. And on top of that, he's sort of pissed me off with his personal opinions in recent months as well. So he's not a guy I would really welcome to be on the Chicago Bulls. If they bring him on, it's not going to make me, root for the team any less. But like I said, I just wouldn't want. I would rather they go in a different direction if possible.
I feel you, man. I feel you on that. But I think that's just what I think the Bulls are going to. I'm pretty sure they did their due diligence, and after doing their due diligence, they made.
Let me get this up. We got some stuff from AK but I'm gonna get some of these quotes up, but you can keep talking while I do that. But he has some response already about to the media about why things played out the way they did today.
Yeah, I think there's reports out there that he really wasn't serious about getting rid of Patrick Williams in any way, shape, or form, which makes sense considering he's the guy. He's like one of the first guys he brought to the team as a president operation. So it makes sense. If anyone was to go, probably Kobe White, considering that he was an inherited player that's young and has a good upside, but also can give you good quality, talent. And the Bulls didn't swing. So I think it's just at the end of the day, they trust Billy Donovan. They trust the current roster that's in place. They're focusing on maybe not winning right now, but waiting for them to make this final big push towards the postseason when everybody comes back healthy. And once everybody comes back healthy, the Bulls will be a force to reckon with over time. And I think those last 35 plus games before that postseason hits, is going to be key for those guys to get back into the good chemistry that they had in the beginning of the season. Especially talking about defensively, how the Bulls struggled defensively amongst the perimeter. So I think that's going to be a big thing that obviously we're going to have to look out for, and maybe the buyout market can help assist in some of those areas, especially from a big men's perspective. But I think the Bulls are just comfortable with what they have and have faith within their own rights that this team currently constructed can still go to the next level, even though the East, the rest of the top teams in the East, or we preferred from a superstar talent, top teams in the East, came out and made the moves that they made.
Yeah, pretty much. I know you're going to go in, Sean, but let me like I said, give some of these quotes from AK first. It's quoted on ABC Sports Chicago. Let me see. I think it reflects that we like this group, Karnisovas said when asked about standing pat. This is for Casey Johnson. Billy obviously said it all along. We're just guys to come back from injuries to get this group together. because we had a short sample of 16 games where most of our guys were healthy. I think there have been tweets too today that have mentioned that the real starting lineup of the Bulls hasn't really played but 5 games together this year. So we could double check that, but that sounds about right. But back to the quote. That doesn't include Patrick. In those 16 games, we were top 5 in offense and defense. So we liked what we looked like when everyone was healthy. Hopefully we'll get this group back and see what we can do. And Casey goes on to write that a soft target date of mid-March is being discussed internally regarding Patrick Williams' return. So that's, you're looking at a possibility in mid-March of having Lonzo back, Caruso back, and P. Will back. With all that said, does that factor into your thinking and your reaction about the Bulls standing pat, Sean?
It doesn't. But I'm not shocked. Like I was hoping they dance, but at the same time, when you hear Donovan for 2 weeks and AK for the better part of the season quoting chemistry and how much value they put on that, I think that was their clue. They tipped their hand that they probably weren't going to make a move, even though I will argue like a dude like Serge Ibaka, who has prior chemistry with DeRozan and Billy Donovan, could have been an easy transition to this team and probably would not have required a lot of movement. Maybe Troy Brown Jr. and the Tice trade exception, and given that LA is a luxury tax team, like that might have been enough to get a surge. But nevertheless, it wasn't on the Bulls' mind to make a move at the trade deadline. But I mean, Cal, my issue is really, it boils down to, we've seen them, the new front office make their stamp be, taking the methodical approach to getting their guy and not, overextending to lose assets. But I would argue that this is really like the second year in a row where you've gone into a season with a gross roster negligence kind of hanging over the head of a season. Now, last year, it was more glaring, right? They didn't address the point guard issue, even though we later found out that Lonzo Ball was their guy all along. But the fact that you didn't address the point guard situation, like that had a domino effect, right? Like you went basically a half.
Probably kept them out of the playoffs last year, yeah.
Well, not just that, but you go a half a season and you place a perceived value on a Wendell Carter Jr. and a Lowry Markkanen, who I would argue if you had a point guard, maybe Lowry has more trade value at last year's deadline. And instead of having to move Wendell Carter, you could have acquired Vucevic by moving Lowry Markkanen. You see what Franz Wagner's doing down there. I mean, you could easily, see Lowry in a similar role in Orlando. So and maybe they were thinking Darren Collinson was that fix. They tried to get him before the season started last year. It didn't happen. But the fact that you didn't address that, it created a domino effect that affected you moving forward. So you gave up Carter and 2 first-round picks to get your center, but now you have a hole at power forward. So I really am disappointed that they didn't act this year. We keep hearing when we get healthy, but that 4 to 6 week window that they're still in to getting your troops back, it leaves me concerned that there's an attrition issue that may pop up with the workload that you're putting on DeRozan. I don't know how many times that dude hits the floor a game, but I pause my breath every time I see it. Zach LaVine's already been in and out of the lineup, and we hope that he doesn't have kinetic chain issues happening. And I can get into a whole soapbox about switching up sneakers every night and what that might be doing to him. But if Vooch goes down, like they're screwed. You look at the rebound disparity with him on and off the floor, like that size issue is not something to be played with. And so I keep hearing when we get our guys back, when we get at full strength, well, what does that really even look like? By the end of the year, if you're putting that much of a load on your top end of the roster with Zach, DeRozan, and Vooch. So fingers crossed, knock on wood, they don't suffer any more injuries. I was never really that high on the defense being sustainable in the first place. I just looked at how they were playing the first 30 games of the season, and you could look at, the style of defense that they were playing and know that there was going to be a little bit of dip, and injuries were likely, just, given the pace and the frenzy way that they get after it when Caruso and Ball's on the floor. But it is what it is at this point. They didn't get their guy. They're going to probably, by default, try to address the holes in the buyout market. I just don't know what's out there. It's still going to maybe be another week before we see what that picture looks like. And at best, you might be working the margins to bring somebody in, but was really disappointed they didn't make a semi splash and address the hole in the trade market.
That's fair. I would say, I think I agree for the most part. I just, like I said, in the way that I was interacting with fans and, looking at other fans' opinions and the way they were expressing them on Twitter today, I just don't think is reason to really be so down. It's only, you could be a little disappointed that nothing happened today, but I just don't think it's a reason to be down about the team in general. So, let's just see how this 4 to 6 week period plays out, and let's see how the guys look when they return, and see how this season plays out overall. It's going to be tough. It was going to be tough regardless of their health. So it's just going to be what it is. And I'm the one who in our most recent survey on Substack, I had them finishing the highest in the league. So I'm just going, I'm not looking through rose-colored glasses, but I'm just looking to think that I think the team is coached well enough and they have enough depth still to where I think they can. I really just think there ain't but 5 or 6 teams that could really abuse the Bulls and their deficiencies on a given night. Everybody else can really easily fall to them on any given night. And I think that'll be enough to keep them at least in that top 3 area, if not top 4. I definitely don't see them falling any further than that. But I'm looking at the numbers.
In a given series, though, in the best of 7.
That's the difference. The playoffs is a different animal. Yeah. Like I said, right now we're still in that regular season, and I think we're looking at where they can compete and put themselves in position to maybe have home court advantage at least for one round, which will be key. So the playoffs is a different animal, Sean. You're right about that. I just want to mention right quick the minutes distribution, and I'm glad that the team is as deep as it is, and I'm glad that a coach like Thibodeau actually isn't the coach right now, because it could be even harder on the guys. But right now you got DeMar leading the team with just over 35 minutes a game. Lonzo is over 34, and Zach is right behind him, pretty much the same, 34.6, 34.5. Nikola, 33 minutes a game, just under 34. And then you drop off to about 27, over 27 minutes each for Caruso and White a game. And Williams, it's only 5 games, but he averaged 25 minutes a game. Io, 24, and Javante, 23. And then you got everybody else under 20 minutes a game. But you got at least 16 players on the roster, who have played this year, who have played at least 10 minutes a game. So, there may not be as much of an issue with strict wear and tear, but you are relying a lot on your top guys. And, when Caruso and Ball are going to be back, you're going to be relying a lot on them to contain opposing offenses from the 3-point line and back, because, as of now, they still don't have that solid rim protector that you would be able to be like, well, we can funnel deep, we can funnel guys in transition or even in the half court. We could funnel ball handlers to this rim protecting guy and still feel comfortable and not necessarily giving up points. If the Bulls can't be olaying anybody with their defense as it is right now, if they let people get behind them, they're giving up points. And we've seen to what degree that is the case over the last really month. But the averages just haven't been there. They've been giving up way too many points, and they don't seem to know how to stop it without Caruso and Ball on the court.
Yeah, that's all facts at the end of the day. But like I said, this stuff just doesn't surprise me. We just got to see how the Bulls come together in those last 35 games or so, or whatever games that are left when you have everybody come back. And we're over here talking about, the impact of Caruso. We're talking about the impact of Lonzo Ball. We're talking about the impact that potentially Patrick Williams will have, even though we've had small sample sizes of it. We haven't even talked about the impact of Derrick Jones Jr. and how he plays a role, especially in that small ball lineup as the power forward or the small five, depending on the roster that's being put out there. He's been great for us on the defensive end as well. So missing that, his athleticism and his lengthiness on the court from a versatility perspective, that's something that the Bulls are missing as well. So once you get all of that back, and you're able to get Patrick Williams as well, that's just going to add additional depth that in that front court area that we need. But at the same time, they probably are. That's probably why they didn't even make a move in the first place, because they're banking on the fact that when Patrick Williams comes back, they can eventually get him acclimated along with Derrick Jones Jr. to strengthen that front court area, and then maybe look in the buyout market to bring somebody else in. It wouldn't surprise me if they were thinking that way, but Derrick Jones Jr. does play a pretty decent role in what that defense looks like, especially when it comes to the perimeter and potentially the post when you talk about the small ball lineup that they play.
As well said, Josh, about what Patrick Williams brings potentially. I think the issue probably with some fans is that we just haven't seen him do it long enough because he's only played a year or so. But I definitely the potential is there for him to have that impact at that 4 position, and that probably did impact the way that AK and Eversley approached this deadline period. So we'll see. Well, let's bring in Gabe now. We got Gabriel Williams joining us for this second hour. What's going on, man? What's
happening?
Having a good day, man. This is I've seen you all day on social media. This is definitely a day. Like I say, if you're a real hoop head and really into the NBA, that you sort of rejoice in a day like this, and it gives you a lot to talk about. So I'm guessing that's how you feel in general, right?
Oh yeah, this is always a big day. It's a big day too because it gives me a chance to talk with people that I know that's kind of somewhat in the loop with certain guys and that you typically won't talk to until like the off season comes around or during the summertime. So the cool part about it too, a lot of big time moves happen today. I mean, can't recall any time during my lifetime where I've seen 2 all-stars of the caliber of a James Harden and a Ben Simmons being involved in a deal for one another, man. I don't think that's something we're gonna see in quite some time because that just doesn't happen often. And especially anytime you have a trade that happens with 2 teams that are in the same division and in the same conference. You talk about a rivalry that's already been there between the Nets. You can say that it's very well renewed at this point because that next a month from today, I believe March the 10th, that's going to be jam-packed and it's going to be a battle, and I can see a lot of fans there.
Yeah, we gonna get back to some league-wide stuff. We haven't gone over the other impactful deals of the day. yet, but no, not too much. But we've been talking about the Bulls when you come in, Gabe, and reacting to them stand pat and really, they say, not challenging the market in as aggressive a way that they did last year. They were hamstrung. Anybody who's followed the team noticed that they were hamstrung much more this year, financially and personnel wise, than they were last year. And they're also blessed to be a much better team with less needs than they were last year. So if you just want to give your opinion right quick on what you think, your reaction to how the Bulls played this deadline, and what do you think it means for them going forward?
My reaction in regards to the Bulls, I mean, they were kind of limited in what they could do, in my opinion. Anytime you have as many young, ranging from a Kobe White to Patrick Williams, you have to be very careful about who you trade those guys for. You're seeking to trade them in the effort to try and bring all-star talent to the city of Chicago. Otherwise, you're going to have a lot of backlash from fans who you sought to tell to be guys. You're going to have that comes with that. So unless if they were to get a marquee player in the city, I didn't really see them seeking to make a big time move. Jeremy Grant, yeah, that sounded good, and that would have been a nice addition. But at the same time, you give up something to get something. But at the same time, the Bulls have a young core that they're seeking to build around. You got young guys that are trying to learn how to play together, not only, as one, but also at the same time, and winning against, more so winning than winning now, but like winning against the primetime teams, the Brooklyns and the Philadelphia and the Miamis, and Cleveland rolls up there, but they also have some well. So I'm not shocked that they stood pat. However, I wonder, how will they seek to play the buyout market?
Definitely. I guess, unless y'all got anything else to add, we pretty much spoke enough on the Bulls as at the moment. And like I said, we just got to see, like Gabe said, like we've all said, essentially what are they going to do in that buyout market? How is it going to unfold? Who's going to be available? There may be a chance that they go after another guard in the buyout market. Maybe a Goran Dragic, who got he got traded today to Dallas. Maybe he winds up getting let go. Excuse me. Yeah. What'd you say? I thought I heard something. My fault. But he winds up getting. He may be on the market. A Schroeder, somebody like that might be on the market. That's Bulls been rumored to be interested in him. We'll see whether it's helping out that backcourt more, or doing what everybody wants to see them do and appeal to that front court. We just got to see what the market is and what's going to be available out there. But looking at what was done today and what wasn't done today, I think a nice little question I got right now is, who are you surprised to see wasn't dealt with, I should say, today? Would the biggest surprise be Jeremy Grant, or is there anybody else who you may rank up with him as far as who you most surprised wasn't dealt on this day?
John Wall, to me, who is arguably the biggest loser of the trade deadline. Granted, he's getting paid and paid recently in Houston, but now you from having a packed deal with the front office, Stone and his crew, and you go from having a promise that you to now no one's inquiring inquiring about your services. And it's wild to me that nobody really sought to give the Rockets a call in regards to John Wall, because while John is on a hefty contract, John Wall can still be a very solid floor general in this league. John Wall has shown ability to be an improved shooter beyond the three-point line. Last year in Houston, albeit in sources, he helped keep that young squad competitive and in a lot of games. And I just was very surprised that it wasn't a single team that tried to make an inquiry in regards to his services. You know, you take a team like the Knicks with Derrick Rose down, you know, questions about Kemba and his health. I don't think that would have hurt a team like the Knicks to maybe give John Wall some consideration, even though I understand maybe why they didn't. We're going to keep your books clear going into the new year. That's to come, whether your team makes the playoffs or not. But John Wall not getting dealt, that kind of surprised me. I knew his name would be around in a lot of rumors and circulating here and there, but for him not to get dealt, especially an all-star level guard, albeit, you know, a couple years removed from an Achilles tear and issues with his meniscus, he still can produce at a high level. And I think it's a team specifically in the Western Conference that we talked about many times on this show that could use him. But now with guys like Schroeder potentially ending up on a buyout market in Houston, Goran Dragic probably ending up on a buyout market in San Antonio, you now have options. And John Wall won't be a part of that market, and it costs him an opportunity to play, even though he's still getting paid.
Yeah. It's funny that you said that, Gabe, because Chris Haynes just reported that technically the Lakers wanted to do a Westbrook Wall swap, but it failed because the Lakers wanted first round picks along with that. So it's interesting that you mentioned that no other team really has reached out, when honestly when you think about it, the only real option he could have had to even pull this off was really this Lakers trade. Or the Lakers as suitors per se. That was honestly his best bet if he wanted to get out of there. And for them to inquire and still say no, especially with everything that's going on in, you know, LA with the Russell Westbrook saga, you still don't pull that type of trade when, quite frankly, Lakers really shouldn't have even had a choice. They should have just took the deal as is. If I was the Lakers, because at the end of the day, you lost all the capital you were gonna get in the first place when you first dealt for Russell Westbrook. But that team and that roster in general is so bad that you are literally at the point of no return. So because of that, you actually have an idea that I think John Wall fits better with the Lakers at this point than Russell Westbrook does. Pairing that with LeBron and AD, I don't see how you would not only inquire, but literally do whatever it takes to even get that type of option to come to LA, even though, Bron might have vouched for Russell Westbrook to come through. And they did everything they can to make it work. But at the end of the day, this roster is a bust. And the way the roster is currently constructed and the offense that's being constructed, and Westbrook is honestly not playing at the level that we know he can play, it's just a bad mix that unfortunately has got into this case. And your best chance to resolve some of that is literally get someone of equal talent potentially to come there and replace that. And especially if they're a better suit on the offensive end for LeBron James and that offense, I don't get it, man. I feel like the Lakers should have pulled the trigger if they could on that.
Do y'all think it comes down to stubbornness in the end, or was it just a situation where they were a little delusional and thinking about what they could have got back for a Westbrook or something like that, or you know, what do y'all think in the end led to the Lakers not making any deals? Is it both?
It was stubbornness. It was on alert because they thought that they would be able to flip a 2027 per draft pick and use that as a big time like filler to potentially flip guys like Russell Westbrook or Taylor Horton Tucker or Kendrick Nunn, who hasn't even played a game this season, to get a high quality piece role player back in return who fits well with LeBron. Now, I can understand maybe why they didn't do the John Wall deal from the standpoint of the Rockets were looking for a first round pick on top of John Wall. Then if you're the Lakers, right, and you have LeBron James on your team in his 4th year in Los Angeles, and you have Anthony Davis, you have to give up something to get something. It's just that simple. You can't around it. And even though I think John Wall would have been more willing to play off of the ball rush, and yeah, he would have be a better spot-up shooter next to LeBron, I think it would have been a challenge for him too, because one thing we know LeBron, one of the most ball-dominant players in NBA history. And in the modern day, he's by far the most ball-dominant, even more than Harden and Luka Doncic. And Bron's not coming off that ball for just anybody. It took Kyrie Irving a year to gain that trust with him in Cleveland. I think that's why they fell out. But when you have a chance, all-star level talent, you got to do it. And I really, at this point, maybe the only player that you really can trade him for is John Wall, because both are on what many people consider to be bad contracts. And it's kind of like a wash, either or whatever. So, I mean, it was a little bit of both. It was stubbornness. The Lakers really thought that they could get teams to bite on young pieces and a first-round draft pick at 2027. And that's not going to cut it. First-round picks aren't really worth much unless you're using those picks to get stars. Because when you get these drafts, you don't know who's going to be the surefire got to pick with those picks.
Yeah, it's a shame, man. The same type of realization that winds up coming to Brooklyn and Philly, which benefits them. You can argue both, and being able to make a trade that they both knew that they needed, and not letting themselves get in their own way. It's sort of fitting, because those are two teams that are winning and that we can expect to, make the playoffs and possibly make some noise in the playoffs, whereas the Lakers just seem to continue to be undone by their, by their own mess, their own dysfunction, and there's a good chance they may not even make the playoffs based off of what they're doing right now and their inability to shake up their roster any. I mean, it's a trip.
You wonder why Magic left.
Yeah, I saw you tweeted that Stephen A going off earlier, man. Stephen A was snapping on him, man. And you wonder why you left your ass.
But if you really think about it, there's some truth. There could be some truth to that, right? Because that was the rumblings before Magic even left, was the clashing that he had with Rob Pelinka in doing his job, and how Rob Pelinka would not give Magic the power that he needed, even though I think Magic just didn't understand the power that he had. But the power dynamic between Rob Pelinka and Magic just did not work, to a point where, since they had different visions for each other, he said, y'all can just have this if he's going to be around. So maybe Magic knew ahead of time what this potentially could look like. And he decided to jump out as early as he did. And yeah, of course, there's some positives that came from it, because LeBron got a championship to LA. But at the end of the day, when the older he's getting and trying to maintain that level of success, it's becoming harder and harder, especially when, quite frankly, you can't trust Anthony Davis to live up to that LA style of accountability. And it's shown throughout ever since he won a championship. Anthony Davis has not been the same. Can't stay healthy. Hasn't been playing all the games he needs to. And even though he's a second option on a team like this, he's playing like a third. He's not scoring as much as he needs to, not taking over games when he needs to. When LeBron is out, he's nowhere to be found. Fourth quarter flushes. Like, he's just not the same guy anymore as of right now in this Lakers uniform. So because of all that, because of that lack of success, you have to wonder what was going on behind the scenes to get to this point, even with Magic Johnson's exit, and what Stephen A. Smith saying when he said, obviously Stephen A. Smith, so you gotta, take it and however you want it, but at the same time, there may be some truth and validity to that, and this is a prime example as to why that is.
Well, what he said, I think the biggest points that he made, but go ahead, Gabe.
To me, Magic did his Magic's job when he got to LA was to get LeBron. He got the big domino to LA. If it wasn't LeBron, there would be no hoopla around what the Lakers are doing. I think Rob did his job by getting Anthony Davis, for LeBron to pair them up together to 1-2 lead duo. It worked very well in year one. They won a championship in year one. What happened was, in my opinion, the Lakers, after they got out to a hot start last year, they got cocky and they thought, well, we could just dominate the league. You know what? With all the talent we have, and then after the series against Phoenix, LeBron didn't have anyone to do and ignite the offense when he was sitting and resting. They sought to go big game hunt. Now they had two options over the summer. They could have went and got Buddy Hield, or they could have went and got Russell Westbrook. They decided to go for Westbrook, but what they did was they let go of a lot of their depth that made their bench unit stronger. And as a result, Washington got it. And as you know, they got off to start the season, albeit now they've cooled off greatly, but I say all that to say, like, they got greedy when they could have gotten a guy that was a complimentary piece that could shoot, that fits very well off the ball besides LeBron.
That's a good point, Gabe. I think when you look at, I was about to say, and sort of going off of what Stephen A. said on First Take today, I think when you look at the people making the decisions for their franchise, you traded in Magic and Jerry West, essentially. We look at the extended back history for Pelinka and the Rambises and, these people who don't know as much about the game and really don't affect themselves as well in the front office as the guys that you had who reestablished that dynasty out there from a time when it looked like they had to rejuvenate themselves completely from the 80s with Shaq and Kobe, and then they had to regroup from when Shaq and Kobe broke up, and they did that with specific high intelligence basketball minds, and they don't have those people in their franchise anymore. They don't have people like that. So when they were able to buy out and do what they did to get that championship in a bubble, they, to Dave's point, they made certain decisions and big, they big game hunted and whatever, and they did these things, but they may have made decisions that I don't think that Jerry West would have made, or necessarily that Magic would have made, and it led to them failing in their last season and really putting themselves in a bad position this year. Sean, you talked about deficiencies that the Bulls allow for themselves to have. Really only one deficiency in the past season each. The Lakers had about 4-5 of them deficiencies that they allowed themselves to have coming into this season, and it allowed them really to have really what's been a horrible season so far. And now after today, there's really no sign of relief coming up because they didn't do nothing, and they don't really have any like I said, no draft capital, no players, flexibility in their their money wise to really do anything that could allow them to be a suitable trade partner for anybody. So yeah, they're the bad way. That's all I really can say about the Lakers right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Gabe stole my thunder when he mentioned John Wall being the most obvious not to get moved. So Let me flip two names at y'all. Let me know what y'all think.
Yeah, go ahead.
Much lesser impact names, but certainly I think Cam Reddish not getting moved, staying in New York. I think
I'm with you on that. Yeah.
I mean, we learned from the Chicago years that if there's smoke around Tibbs is legit, and we saw reports earlier this week saying that he didn't even want Reddish on the team, and the dysfunction is similar in New York in their front office situation. But Reddish, this is his third year. He's extension eligible after this year, and now you get supplanted onto the pine in New York. You got the reputation thing over his head. The talent is there, but he this year of not getting moved and not being able to showcase like he did last playoffs could very easily cost that dude millions. Tons of money is on the table for him in the extension market, but I don't see it happening in New York. And then on the flip side, Spencer Dinwiddie going to Dallas, he got moved, but I think that puts him in a situation where he finally had a chance to run a team, and now he's going to be behind Brunson and Luka and Hardaway Jr. So I don't know how long that situation is going to last in Dallas, but yeah, those are just two names I wanted to throw out there and get y'all opinion on.
Well, as we go into, I'm gonna go right quick into the list of deals that were made, today and everything. And hey, man, I kind of hit it on the head, man, with the Wizards, man. They, I say I ain't bragging or nothing, but a broken clock is right twice a day, But I for those who know, we had a Twitter space last night. You can listen to it if you just visit WARR, and we were talking about some of the early deals that were, and I was I just brought up towards the end thinking, especially in light of Bradley Beal being sidelined for the rest of the season, that Washington may more or less pack it up. And they almost stripped themselves down to their parts, to the ball bearings today, man. They let off quite a few deals, and probably the biggest headline deal was the one that Sean mentions there with Dinwiddie going to Dallas and them getting Kristaps Porzingis. In return, I believe Davis Bertans was involved in that deal as well. Let me make sure. And that's just it's really a trip to see how that went down. And I think a lot of I saw a lot of Washington fans just really like blindsided by these deals. And the other one we mentioned earlier about Montrezl Harrell being dealt, and let me see. I think there's another one, maybe, but those two alone were high impact deals, and really showed that they're like I say they're reestablishing themselves. They really don't. They have to not really like where they at in the East right now to make those deals if they give away those talents like that, especially Harrell, who was making a big impact in their front court. So that's all I would say on that. That I kind of saw that coming, but yeah.
I mean, I think to piggyback off of Sean when he talked about how even though Spencer Dinwiddie got dealt, it's a trade that just didn't make sense for Spencer Dinwiddie in that situation he's about to step into. Even though this trade already took place, I was one of the many people that scratched their heads on it. Tyler Halliburton. Like, Sacramento, what the hell are you doing? Like, why did you trade that guy who actually wanted to be there and was putting up big numbers, and you trade him to Indiana? I mean, I get, you want to start fresh and rebuild in certain ways, but
you at least get Domantas Sabonis back in that at least.
You do.
That's why Sacramento made that move. They were seeking to get a star to pair beside De'Aaron Fox. You got to think about it too. They got They had three guards over there: Fox, Halliburton, and Mitchell. They needed
how
a
long is
guard
that going to stay?
complement. Yeah, they needed a guard that was going to complement De'Aaron. Halliburton got in the way because he's a pick and roll savant who can shoot and run offense, which is what you had De'Aaron doing. Mitchell is a guy that can play off the ball, but he helps you out defensively. And we all know Sacramento is like among the bottom year in and year out in defensive efficiency. I think that's why they stuck with Mitchell and they decided to ship Halliburton. Now, in the next 2 to 3 years, depending on how it plays out in Indianapolis, that could be a move that they regret, as well as with Sacramento, because you still have an issue with your interior defense with Sabonis there. However, what Sabonis gives you is a guy that can direct the offense when Fox sits. He's a guy that you can stretch the floor with, as well as run your offense around, which is struggled. But then they do lose 3-point shooting by also putting Hield in that deal, which to me is the greatest concern of all, because now your best 3-point shooter is like Harrison Barnes, and he's 35% from the field. You know, like as far as what Washington did today, trading Harrell, I can kind of understand why they did that, because I just was looking on Hoops Hype. He makes $9 million a year, and he's on his contract is set to expire. He'll be a free agent next summer. So that way, you know, you get him off the books. And one thing about Washington, they've always sought to pair Bradley Beal with a star, whether that star was injured or not. Getting Kristaps, even though I don't think that's the same Kristaps from New York several years ago, could be interesting if he can stay healthy and you put him with those role players that they still have in place, such as Kuz, Hachimura, Avija, and others.
Yeah, but yeah, Jazz. It's definitely understand. A lot of people across the league were like, "Yeah, why do you get rid of a guy like Halliburton with such talent that he has?" I think the issue stems back to, you know, how the Kings are run overall, and they're drafting him in the first place. Like, you know, he was eventually gonna get in the way of your guy Fox, who you already had there as established as a young star who you're going to build around. So, you know, it's tough, but you know, it's a nice way for Indiana to come up. So, you know, it makes it a little harder on the East and the Bulls in the Central. But go ahead, Gabe.
When they did that in back-to-back drafts, it kind of reminded me of like back in the mid-2010s when they went and got Ben McLemore. I believe it was like in 13, and then they went and got Stauskas in 14. It's like, who does that? Sacramento is all horrible outside of when they drafted Cousins and Fox for the last 10+ years.
Definitely. Yeah. As I say, let's go back to those pre-drafts deals prior to today. You know, again, Cleveland, Sean had that nice deal with Karis LeVert. What do you think? How folks been responding out there to that deal, and are people you know, more encouraged out there about those Cavs after that deal?
Oh yeah, big time. I mean, I think the Cavs coming into this year were slept on, and then they over the course of the first month and a half of the season, they showed, you know, where they have the advantage and exploited that night in, night out with that size. Now, you know, they playing with house money. You know what I mean? And you bring in a LeVert who gives them a nice complement to Darius Garland. I think the Colin Sexton injury I won't call it a blessing in disguise, but it really freed Garland up to do his thing this year. And so now you bring in a capable scorer, someone who, you know, gives them a little bit more height than Sexton, but, you know, just as explosive, if not more of a scorer. You know, I don't want to play them in a 7-game series. I don't see, you know, the Bulls or any other team in the East really matching up well, with the exception of maybe Milwaukee. So I mean, like they're sitting nice in the 4 seed right now. If there's any slippage from the Bulls, they could easily be in that top 3. And like I said, they playing with house money, so there's a lot of excitement, a lot of buzz in Cleveland going into you know, next week and the festivities for All-Star Week. And so now they get a chance to showcase the city and the team. And who's to say they may be aggressive in the buyout market themselves. Now they've created a team where, you know, a guy like Kevin Love can get on the horn and start talking to some of these veterans. And, you know, that's the challenge with the buyout market. As much as we talk about, you know, the Bulls maybe being active, you know, you it's a competition. You know, you got to match up with whoever's trending in the right direction when you start talking about guys want to join a team to ring chase. And so Cleveland is in a very advantageous position because of the momentum they've already built, and now they made a move with LeVert, you know, showing that they're in it to win it this year.
That's a good point, Sean. You are more at the will of these veteran players, and you got to make yourself, you know, sort of going back to college, where you got to make yourself look appealing to these guys that are out there. And there's only so many who may be able to really impact teams around the league for the rest of the season. So if the Bulls are going to be in play for any of those guys, they got to compete with for Cleveland, Milwaukee, or, you know, Denver or Utah, or somebody out west, Clippers or whatever, and be like, well, you know, you might want to rather be here than over there. But we'll see how that plays out. But we'll get back to the deals that were made. And again, like prior to today, you had, you know, we all know really got the headlines. You know, Reddish, you talked about him being dealt his second time. He already got dealt from Atlanta to the Knicks. Like I said, LeVert got dealt to Cleveland, and some picks. You know, Powell and Cutton moving from to the Clippers from the Blazers. Norman Powell and Covington and you know, McCollum, of course, the big deal with the Blazers and the Pelicans, and players from the Pelicans in that deal wind up getting moved in another deal. Nickeil Alexander-Walker among them, going from Portland to the Jazz, and the Spurs started their dealings in that deal as well. They wind up making a couple deals today. I'll get into that in a minute. But you know, as we get into the deals today, you know, the Celtics made a nice cutting deal at the beginning of the day, getting rid of PJ Dozier and Bol. It's like saying Bol. And but they got rid of him early, and later they made a couple nice moves. They get Derek White, which I think really stabilizes their backcourt from the point guard position, and they reacquire Daniel Theis, who you know, made some headway here in Chicago after being dealt here at the trade deadline last year. They give up Dennis Schroeder, who you know, some people was thinking he might be someone who was dealt here, as well as a couple other contenders, the Lakers as well. But he winds up getting sent to Houston for Daniel Theis. So you know, they solidified their front court some more, the Celtics do, without really giving up a player in Schroeder, who it didn't seem like there was much of a future for him on that team anyway. But you know, you get the Goran Dragic trade to the Spurs. Thad Young coming back to going back in that trade, going to Toronto. That's, you know, that's pretty nice move there. We look at some of these frontline players again who are moving, and, you know, Bulls fans aren't going to like, you know, didn't like hearing these moves throughout the day. Torrey Craig moving from the Pacers to the Suns. You know, it's the type of stuff that, you know, again, sort of frustrates some fans along the way. But we'll see how those deals play out, and who really gets to you know, really takes advantage of those deals and what they become of these teams. And the big 4-team deal is the last deal I'm gonna mention. That was probably the deal that really broke things open today, with the Bucks, Pistons, Clippers, and Kings all involved there. I don't know, from that deal or any other ones, what was the deal that really sticks out to y'all today, outside of the ones that we've already talked about?
That's tough.
14
It's
deal.
hard to measure up to
The Bucks.
Go ahead, Gabe.
Yeah, I 14 deal.
Game 14 deal.
Yeah, because like our team that's been in that playing range, and for them to make the moves that they've been making over the deadline, to me, like Kawhi and PG must be rehabbing behind closed doors, feeling like really, really good, because they've gone all in and they've let it be known that they're not seeking to punt away their season by any means. And that's a group that if I have a top seed in the West, I don't want to face them in the best of 7 series. That defense has gotten better. My only question is if Zubac was to get hurt, who do you have to back him up at the 5? It's obvious that they're going to go all in on small ball. Batum's going to be playing a lot of small ball 5 there. Robert Covington's going to be playing a lot of small ball 5 there as well. But from an X's and O's standpoint, I'm very intrigued to see that Clippers roster. And I know that they're not done because they can get a point guard now off the buyout market, and they don't have to pay much. You could get a Dennis Schroeder in LA. You could get a Goran Dragic to pair with those guys. And defensively, they're going to be ready. And Ty Lue has always been a master of making adjustments on the fly when he needs to and when he has to. I really like what the Clippers have done.
Yeah. And look at the big names also included in that trade. You know, Gabe mentions the size that they give up in that deal. That was indeed Serge Ibaka going to Milwaukee. Milwaukee sends out Dante DiVincenzo. He goes out to Sacramento. And Marvin Bagley, the third, who was pretty frustrated out there in Sacramento, winds up going to Detroit. So, I think, that's a deal that, like I said, a lot of interesting parts to it. Remains to be seen how those guys are going to function in their new places. But I think there's a good chance that, at least 2 or 3 of the teams in that deal may be feeling pretty good about themselves right now. And like I said, DiVincenzo does some different things coming back to Sacramento. We talked about the state of their backcourt, gives you a little bit more shooting and, not necessarily a guy who's going to be ball dominant as opposed to as much as maybe Tyrese Halliburton. He could be more of a dispenser of the ball, playing, possibly next to Fox, or, staggering numbers with Fox, staggering to minutes with Fox and all that. So, a little more flexibility possibly is allowed to Sacramento coming out of this deal, and they get rid of a disgruntled player again in Bagley, and him going to Detroit. Detroit isn't the most glamorous team right now, but they're a team that has some young talent, and I would imagine that Bagley's going to be able to play more and contribute. He's definitely going to be of need more in Detroit than he was in Sacramento. Yeah. So Sean got his little connection issues. We'll see if he could join us. We're gonna start to wrap up pretty soon. Like I said, I got to get over. We're gonna get a playoff preview, NFL playoff, Super Bowl playoff preview at the top of the hour with Lakina and Champ Tanksley and Ken Davis will be a guest on that one. But as we wrap this show up, like I said, anything else, any other details of these trades that happened today that stand out to y'all?
Of course, I mean Harden going to Philly. I mean, I don't think James has ever played with a big as talented as Joel Embiid. Granted, he's played with a lot of talented pieces, but that's going to be a hell of a 1-2 duo in Philadelphia, as well as Ben Simmons and Kevin Durant in Brooklyn, with his passing wizardry and stuff. And, he won't get exposed for his lack of a jump shot in Brooklyn, playing besides not only KD, but Kyrie as well. I think that move works for both teams, especially when it was friction between Kyrie and James that I know was happening. I just was disappointed that Woj was bluffing with the news, because when I saw the morning article at the top of the hour saying, James was worried about the backlash, I believe that was true, but at the same time, that was a deal that I felt like was going to happen no matter what. It was only a matter of time with the way that they were resting James out of games and whatnot.
Well, and you know what? That makes me that reminds me of the tweet. Stat Muse apparently was given the keeping track of the trades broken by Woj and Shams today, and they give an 11-8 edge to Shams. So Stadium tweeted out that there's a new king. So maybe Woj may have been a little bit. He may have thought himself. He may have overthought a little bit with that one, Gabe. He might have had got out to a better start today if he just went ahead and broke that instead of sitting on it like you think, man.
Yeah.
Well, that's part of the whole thing too with these trade deadlines. And people keep track of, like say, Shams versus Woj. That's a big of a rivalry as any we got in the game right now.
Yeah, man, it's definitely something special to witness. But at the same time, obviously, I think the biggest thing that I want to pay attention to, one of the biggest things that's kind of small, but it might be a big deal for the Bulls, especially when we talk about how they need that front court depth. I don't know if Tristan Thompson's going to be in that buyout market, but he sure was part of that trade that went to the Pacers.
Yeah.
Maybe if he gets bought out, and he wants to chase another ring, like Sean talked about how there's going to be a lot of competition potentially for his services, but if he drives a couple hours back to East, going towards I forgot which direction that is per se, but he goes to Chicago, potentially coming from Indiana.
This got to go up I-65.
Yep, yeah. That could be an ideal option for him, especially when you're talking about his services coming off the bench as a backup for Vooch. He may not bring the offensive firepower that Vooch brings, but he brings the defensive component and the rebounding that we mentioned before. So that's definitely an option for the Bulls to really potentially pursue if that were to happen. I just don't know if if he's gonna get any of these Chicago women pregnant. But hey, I don't know. We'll see about how that goes.
See, that's what they were saying about Indianapolis right away. Like he might take over Indianapolis if he went there, man. I can see him doing this thing I can see him being a Rush Street MVP in Chicago.
Yeah, he might mess around and take over Naptown a little bit. We'll see though if he stays. Otherwise, he's gonna try to come and be the next Windy City assassin, but only in the bedroom.
I'm saying, I was saying. He'd be a River North soldier coming up this way.
I can see that.
Man. Yeah.
True. That's very true, man. But also, I got to give a shout out to our guy Cam Smith, man. Cam Smith, Stadium did their inside the association trade deadline show for a few hours today, and Cam definitely out there for sure. So
shout out to all our friends, man. Yeah, shout out to all our friends who was putting in work today in their own way, doing what they do. School B, he's gonna be on the show next week. And all our peoples, man. Like I said, Rob Schaefer, my colleague over at NBC Sports, and like I said, everybody doing their thing, man. This is a great day, like I say, to cover the league and to be obsessed with the league in whatever way, however you getting. If you get money off of it, even more power to you. So, definitely salute to everybody out there. But like I said, before we go, though, I'm just gonna go over these rosters with the All-Star team real quick. We'll probably talk some more about it as we get more talk about more about it next week, previewing the All-Star kids and stuff. But I said earlier, the two Bulls All-Stars got split up from Team Durant and Team LeBron, and I made notice. I don't know if you saw Gabe, but there's a great bit of the drafting portion of the broadcast on TNT when they got to the reserves. Durant was sort of obviously, but not obviously avoiding drafting Harden. And it got to a point where it was so obvious that everybody set noticed and sort of broke up everybody. Durant didn't lose no cool. He just went about his business and he made sure that he wasn't gonna have that dude on his team. And I ain't mad at him. It's still fresh. It's still very fresh. So we'll see how it plays out in those up in Brooklyn and Philly games. But as of though they are constructed, LeBron wound up selecting Giannis, Steph Curry, DeMar DeRozan, and Nikola Jokic as his starters. Embiid, Jason Tatum, and Trae Young and Andrew Wiggins are the starters for Durant. Of course, we know Durant is not going to be playing in the game, so they actually got Tatum as sort of a automatic selection to replace him. And the reserves for Team James include Luka Doncic, Darius Garland, Chris Paul, Butler, Donovan Mitchell, Fred VanVleet, and Harden. And on the other side for Durant, he's got Booker, Karl Anthony Towns, Zach LaVine, DeJounte Murray, Chris Middleton, LaMelo Ball, and Rudy Gobert. Either one of those teams look particularly more tempting than the other to y'all?
I think KD is looking to be is pretty much being a better GM than LeBron. In this regard, I like the moves that Kevin Durant has made, especially when you talk about getting Joel Embiid on the team. I just think that he has a more diverse catalog as far as offensively in combination with defensively what that offense can do, and what that roster can do compared to Bron. So Bron got some big names over there. I feel him, but KD.
Brown just going after stars again, huh?
Yeah, I think Bron's pulling up the stars again. Which, I mean, hey, when stars align, it's a beautiful thing. But you got to have strategies to go with it. I think Durant is taking a more strategic approach with this, and he constructed a better roster than Bron did. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes at All-Star Weekend. I'm looking forward to seeing that game and how that goes down. Especially, since KD didn't choose Harden, and he did not. He seemed like he was pretty adamant as to why that's going to be. So I'm looking forward to see how all that goes down.
He was not having that. Yeah. Brian is 4-0 in these games, so he's been able to maintain an undefeated record so far.
I want to see how many minutes Bron gonna play, because when I look at Bron roster, like for real, when I look at Bron, he got so many guards. He can run like 2-man guard units or whatever. Like, he don't have to handle the ball. All he got to do is just like run up the floor, catch lobs or whatever. Like, if this game get ugly, you could see a repeat of what happened last year. But then again, since it's in Cleveland, I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt, knowing that Cleveland only
give him a little something
to play once a year. I think he'll put his best foot forward. But all them guards they got, man, that's gonna be tough to stop, because they got a lot of firepower with the guard position. It's take your pick.
He gonna have them doing a lot of the heavy lifting. Gabe, look, if he come out there with a rolled up paper in his hand, he ain't gonna be playing much. He gonna be pounding that paper in his palm like, go and do that, Darius. He gonna be directing. He gonna be doing more directing than playing.
If they get up 20, I believe you.
Hey, Shy, man, you got any thoughts, man, before we wrap up?
Just to switch it a little bit, the skills challenge, I'm not really feeling the shenanigans with the skills challenge, man. They switched it up this year, but I do credit the league for thinking outside of the box on the rising stars. I'm really looking forward to the tournament style brackets that they created for that. So just the lead up to the All-Star game is going to be,
Yeah.
a little exciting on the Rising Stars front, and then not so much on the skills challenge. But now y'all hit on the points in terms of the big game on Sunday. KD definitely did his thing. I suspect they'll get out. To me, it looks like they got the better 3-point shooters, and so we know that the All-Star game is all about jacking up the threes and getting the lobs in. So if Team KD get out to an early lead, because they got the 3-point shooters, it may be tough for LeBron squad to catch up.
Definitely. You gonna try to make it out to any of the I know it's gonna be a lot going on in Cleveland in general, but as far as the games or anything, you gonna try to make it out to any of those?
And they taxing. I'll do my best and see if I can pull some strings and get in there one of them days. But yeah, they definitely taxing. But there's a lot going on outside of the game, as you know. A lot of festivities, a lot of forums and summits that are going to be impactful as well. So I'm definitely going to be in the mix in some capacity.
Yeah, we're going to have Sean on for the first show after All-Star Weekend, so get some of the on-the-ground reaction from him and stuff, because I don't think any of us from the show are going to be there this year. So, but like I say, Sean lives out in the land.
Man, it's like we're just a couple hours away.
I know, man. It's I would love to, but I don't think it's going to work for me this year. But yeah, but like I said, we got one guy out there in the land. We gonna make some use of you. But yeah, that's the show, man. For this evening, I definitely thank you guys for sitting in with me and talking everything that happened today. It was, like I said again, a fun day, a lot to chew on, and a lot to deliberate on going forward. But yeah, it's going to be a very interesting rest of the NBA season in general here in Chicago and abroad. And we got, like I said, no moves were made on the Bulls' behalf, but we at least have the comfort in knowing that they still are a competitive team, and they're going to factor in how the East is decided one way or another. So just got to take it at how we live in that manner. But I hate to rush, but I got another show. But for signing off for my guys, Josh, let me get the tags up for Josh and Gabe. You could follow them on Twitter. Definitely great follows if you're not following them already. And Sean, of course, we want more people to follow Sean, man, out there. He definitely is in the mix with a lot of the basketball talk. That's why you're going to see him more on this show. So, Sean, you ain't got the tag up, but let people know how to follow you.
Yeah, I'm at Craft Beer So Shy, all one word together. And just follow the shenanigans. Definitely on the Bulls front too. If you're looking for Bulls insight and perspective, you can find me there on Twitter. And we'll get some other platforms going this year too.
For sure. Like I said, you're gonna hear more of him on the show, on this show in particular. And he's part of the Regal family, the WARR family, always. So he helped establish this stuff. So definitely give him his props for that. And me, y'all should know where to find me if you don't by now. But I'm out here either way. So that's it for now. Like I said, I'm gonna be. You're not actually gonna see me on this next show, but I'm gonna be running it from behind the boards. But check out Lakina and Joe and Ken Davis and Vic Chokshi gonna be on our NFL Super Bowl preview extravaganza. This was a spectacular. That's gonna be an extravaganza. Sure. So more work for yours truly, more work for our guys, more work, more life. We gonna keep bringing it to you as only we can here on Running with WARR. Check back with us next week, and until then, y'all keep bouncing.
All right, y'all. Peace.